I've been trying to schedule this interview for over a year, and today I'm featuring an interview I had with Kaelynn Partlow, who is an adult with autism, but she's also a registered behavior tech. She's done keynote speeches. She's an author of a book um, all about her experiences as a person with autism as well as a professional in the field. It's a great interview. We talk about all kinds of things, her parents' disclosure that she had autism. We talk about ABA controversy and the different levels of autism and how we can get positive procedures out to the world. So, great interview. Let's get to it with Kaelynn Partlow. Hi, Kaylin. I'm so excited to have you on the show today. Thank you for joining us.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Yeah, I've been following you for a little bit now, probably 2 years on social media, and you have such a unique perspective as a person with autism and as an RBT, and now you're a keynote speaker, traveling around, and an author, and we're going to talk about all of that. But I did read in your bio that you were diagnosed at the age of 10, and I'm wondering, um, did your parents come and tell you, or like, how did you find out you were on the autism spectrum and how did you react?
I knew there was something not quite right. Things weren't going great at school, things weren't going great at home. My evaluation took place in Orlando, Florida. That's where my uncle lived, and he had paid for some pretty extensive testing, more than you would normally expect. So when I was diagnosed with autism, they also discovered ADD, which at the time it was ADD, not ADHD. And several learning disabilities as well. So it was a very intensive process. And I knew, just from going through that process that something was wrong, right? But they didn't really tell me what it was. At the end of the testing, they said, you have dyslexia. It means it's hard to read. You think differently. And I said, cool, that explains everything. But they didn't give me the full picture. So I didn't really know until I was about 13 or 14. And it was when my mom discovered the Temple Grandin movie. She had sat me down to watch the Temple Grandin movie and was like, you're kind of like her. And that's when she enrolled me in Project Hope Foundation, which is a school for kids on the autism spectrum.
Okay, and where is Project Hope located?
Greenville, South Carolina.
Okay, in South Carolina. So, um, how do you have any tips? My son Lucas is 28 years old, and how old are you now, Kaylin?
27.
Okay, so you're around his age. And I mean, he has significant autism and he doesn't understand, like, there's no sit down, you have autism.
Right.
More
Right.
for the sibling, for siblings, although Spencer just always knew Lucas having autism. So, do you have any advice for parents on telling the child that they have autism and or telling siblings or like how to disclose that, or does it really just depend on the situation?
It's so hard because I feel like it depends on the situation. Not every young child is ready to receive information like that. And I think when you do disclose to a child at a young age, I think it's important to, I wouldn't say lie necessarily, but kind of focus on positives before you get into what all the challenges entail. Describing that means your brain thinks differently. There are several online resources. I use a lot of times videos to talk to my clients about it that kind of give a general overview of what it means to have a brain that thinks differently, but that doesn't really get into the nitty gritty of what those challenges really look like, because I think that can be really overwhelming information for a child to have at especially such a young age, with self-esteem issues being pretty common, as a point of weakness for many on the spectrum. I think sometimes it can help and sometimes it can make it more challenging.
Yeah. What were your struggles? So up until 10, did you go, or up until 10 or 13, did you go to mainstream school, general education, or what was the transition to the Project Hope Foundation school?
I was kind of in and out of educational placements. We had initially tried public school, and it just didn't go very well. Socially, I was okay, but academically, I was so far behind everybody else. There was a lot of school refusal, a lot of meltdowns at home, just anticipating, I think, some of the struggles. And so when we moved from New York to South Carolina, my parents had enrolled me in a small private Christian school, which was okay for about a year. But then around third grade, things start getting harder academically and things start getting harder socially. And that's when I started having some issues with peers and I had pervasive academic struggles. I mean, if you could fail the third grade, I failed the third grade. And my self-esteem was absolutely terrible. Um, and so that kind of sparked the journey of diagnosis. We had homeschooled on and off. There was just no placement that made a whole lot of sense until Project Hope.
Yeah. And Project Hope was founded by parents.
Yeah, it was founded by two moms of sons with more profound autism. They had wanted to have a school environment where their kids could be included. And at the time, that was not the public school system, at least not here in South Carolina.
Yeah, yeah. I do find that locally, as a behavior analyst, there were a lot of, or some programs, standalone programs for kids with more profound autism, but it seems like the higher the language and cognitive ability, then you really do get like hard to find a good placement. So this Project Hope Foundation has kids with more profound and um, kids like your level.
It was both. At the time, it was an inclusion-based school, so they had a regular school system for
Uh,
neurotypical children, but there was inclusion programs for autistic children as well. And then they had created a program called Bridging the Gap, which was a autism-specific classroom. They have since just stuck with the autism-specific classrooms. We no longer do inclusion classrooms. But yeah, it was inclusion-based at the time.
oh, okay. So that was really a great fit for you.
Yeah,
And now you've transitioned to bridging another gap by becoming an RBT.
right.
Um, and so, and working for the Project Hope Foundation. So tell us about that transition, why you wanted to be an RBT, or if that was just like a natural thing.
Yeah, it was like, I don't know, it just kind of came to me rather than me coming to it. Being a student at Project Hope, I was one of the individuals who had more language and cognitive abilities, and I was very socially motivated. And so I quickly discovered that I really liked interacting with the children. I really liked the neurotypical children, but I really, really liked the kids on the spectrum. I just thought they were a great time. And so we kind of formed an internship for me to work towards various goals and helping the teachers in the classrooms during my academic time. Which was really, really awesome. And that's kind of how I guess, was initially exposed to the RBT role. And it was kind of became a solidified plan for me to work towards that after graduation.
Yeah, wow. And now you wrote and published a book called Life on the Bridge, linking my world to yours as an autistic therapist. I just ordered it in preparation for this interview. It only came yesterday late, and I only read the first, 20 pages, but it is excellent, Kaelynn.
Thank
Great
you.
job. Yeah, awesome. So we'll link this in the show notes. It's available on Amazon. Anywhere else it's
Just
available?
Amazon for right now.
Just Amazon. Okay. So, why did you decide to write a book on top of everything?
I don't know. I like it sounds egotistical when I say this, but I'm a good writer and I wanted to have all of my material in one place. Not everybody uses social media. And even if they do, I get a lot of messages of people asking, "Hey, when you talked about giving choices," or "Hey, when you helped, talk about helping people deal with meltdowns or challenging behavior, where can I find that?" And so putting it in a book kind of centralizes everything, keeping it in one place for people who want a reference to some of the things I talk about. And so I guess that was, my biggest motivation.
Yeah. And so, who is the book for and what are the key lessons? Like, what's in here? What can people expect?
The book is for anybody. It's written more for an adult audience, so it's not necessarily intended for young children, although it's acceptable for children to read it. But like I said, it's for anybody. It's for parents, it's for professionals, it's for educators, it's for autistic adults. I've gotten a lot of feedback from people belonging to all of those groups saying it's been very helpful. The whole point is to give actionable solutions, practical tips. I mean, a lot of books that I've encountered about autism will make you feel like you're not alone and will make you feel included. And that's great. There's certainly value in that. And I've got some feeling stuff in mind too, but I want something practical. I want someone to be able to take something away that's going to actually do something in their life. And that was, I guess, the other motivation in writing it.
Yeah. So in the first couple of pages, you say that you live with roommates, neurotypical roommates, and
Mhm.
then, you're independent, you have a job. but at the same time, you could have like a meltdown or um, so. And I know on your videos, a lot of times you'll have like a fidget with you, or when you're speaking, um, and so like, do you really still have these, meltdowns, and do you use fidget toys and things like, does that help you?
Oh yeah. I mean, it happens on occasion. I would say it certainly doesn't happen as much as, for other people, but I certainly have my triggers that can cause kind of a disproportionate emotional explosion. And it's kind of challenging to have the cognition to know that this is not a healthy reaction. This reaction is disproportionate and still at times being powerless to stop it. For example, mechanical issues with my car is kind of a trigger. If it's not a trigger, it's certainly a setting event. And those sorts of issues can, anything piled on top of maybe a mechanical issue with my car that disrupts my routine, it's likely to cause an issue for me. Knowing that, I have ways to solve the problem, sometimes it can still, the emotions, I guess, can get the best of me at times.
So you drive. So when did you learn to drive?
I learned when I was 15 or 16. It was one of those like, I had been behind in a lot of other things in my life. I'd been behind socially, I had been behind academically. I did not want to be behind in terms of getting a driver's license. Everybody around me at that time was getting a driver's license, and I refused to be late on that. I had to go to OT for 6 months to be able to kind of develop the, I guess, hand-eye coordination and maybe some emotional regulation strategies for that. But I refused to be late on that. So I did get my driver's license by the time I turned 16.
Wow. I know a lot of kids that do eventually, that are on the spectrum, that eventually do drive, do have to delay it a little bit, especially boys.
Mhm.
Um, and I did do a podcast interview with Kelly and Susie Carpenter. Kelly's on the spectrum and drives, and Susie's her mom. And it's a really good episode. We can link it in the show notes. But we talked about like driving and dating and all kinds of things. And I think she delayed it by a little bit, but Kelly, like you, never went to college, has some academic challenges, and but she's a gifted photographer. She's living independently, working, and so even kids that grow up with severe challenges, um, learning challenges, can do amazing things, which is amazing. So speaking about dating, I found you originally because I watched Love on the Spectrum. I watched the original Love on the Spectrum, which was in Australia, and had Kerry Magro on my show, and when it was coming to the United States, and we talked about love on the spectrum and dating and his ambition to find love, which last time I heard about him or heard from him, he did find love. So you were on Love on the Spectrum for the first season of the United States. So how did you get cast? Tell us about that experience if you're able to.
Yeah, everybody thinks it's like this magical story about, getting cast, and it's really not. It's kind of a lame story. I was on Facebook and there was a post talking about casting for Love on the Spectrum. They had linked an email. If you were interested, you could fill out an application and send it to them. And it's one of those things where you think, I'm certainly not going to get selected, but why not, right? It's just an application. It's not going to take that much time. And I did, and I tend to interview well. I'm relatively good at Q&A. And so several interviews later, I mean, it moved very quickly. And then next thing you know, the crew is at my door. So it's not like some crazy story. It was just a Facebook post.
Yeah. So you did not find love. You went on a few dates, I think, right? On
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
season, right? So how is that, was that experience helpful?
It was, it's one of those like once in a lifetime experiences. Like there's not too many people I could have asked about, being on a TV show. Most people don't get that opportunity. So you know, I did not necessarily expect to find love. I had very low expectations, but I wanted the experience just because I thought, it might be something cool and maybe I would find love. Did not have high hopes. And went through with it.
Now, did your mom like go with you? Did you have to travel anywhere for it, or did they just find you dates in your hometown and they just filmed right there on location?
Yeah, we didn't have to travel. They came to us. And there was lots of filming that they actually cut out. They cut out an entire day of filming. So they came to my mom's house. They came to work with me. My regular client was out that day, so I had to do a fill-in session with a client who I didn't know very well on camera. That was challenging. But they cut that whole day. They didn't have time to include all the film in there. But there's a whole day's worth of filming that was not included.
Wow. And I think I saw some of the cast like out in Hollywood and things that did you go to award shows or
We were
was
not invited over here on the East Coast. They did not want to pay for that. They did not pay us for
uh,
our time at all. And so when it came time for like the award ceremonies, they did not invite folks over here on the East Coast because they did not want to compensate travel expenses. Everybody who did get to attend already lived in or around LA and were able to handle their own travel and stuff like that. So
I get it. Yeah. I mean, being in South Carolina, I'm sure was not conducive to, you know.
we could have bought tickets, but whatever. They didn't even ask.
Yeah, yeah. Well, how is are you continuing to date or is that something on the
I don't
back burner
know. I
now?
am very picky.
As
So,
you
and
should
I guess
be.
my geographical location makes it hard. I'm looking for somebody who is compassionate and who is intelligent, and sometimes finding that combination together can be very challenging. And I'm relatively intolerant of the small talk back and forth that has to go on when you're chatting with people just over dating apps. Hi, how are you? How's your day? What do you do for work? Where did you grow up? What's your family like? All of the information that's out there about me is just a Google search away. So I have a really hard time typing it into a chat box over and over and over, knowing it probably won't work out. So once I guess, get a better attitude, maybe we'll resume.
I think dating is tough for many, many people. Are you open to dating both on the spectrum and neurotypical individuals?
I think I would have a preference for dating somebody neurotypical. I'm already, I say this jokingly. I say that occasionally I am neurotic enough. We don't need to add more. I don't need to work with people like me and live with people like me and then also date people. This is eventually it's too much, right? And even if I did date somebody on the spectrum, it would have to be in a way where their challenges and strengths compensate for mine. I think it would be really challenging if we had strengths and weaknesses that were similar.
Yeah, that's a very, very good point. So, so because you were on Love on the Spectrum, I imagine then your social media blew up from that.
It did.
Yeah. So now you're on social media a lot and you're you know it seems like you're filming and you're producing shorts and those sorts of things pretty frequently, like almost
Yeah.
daily. Is that your schedule? Like, do you post daily?
No, not daily. A couple times a week, I would say. Maybe I'm producing new content 2 to 3 times a week,
Okay,
which it takes a lot of time. It's very time consuming. But yeah,
I
a couple
know. And
times a week to
do you
keep
have
it up.
people that work with you, like editing and publishing, or is it
No,
all you?
it's just me.
Oh, yeah, that's a ton because I publish, you know, probably every day, in some sort, but I have a team. Like I've got people to do things and to answer comments, to help me answer comments at least. So one of the things I like about your social media videos is that you sometimes have another young person with autism around your age that is level 3 or profound autism. You told me his name is Colby. And so you've known Colby for many years, and in those videos, you really highlight the difference between, level 1, 2, and 3 autism. And maybe some of our listeners, don't know, although I just did a podcast like last last time, I think, on what is autism in 2025. You know what I mean? Because it changes. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, I've been in it for 25 years. I've been in it since you were born in the autism world. Um, and not that the diagnosis or the struggles change, but just our interpretation, new
Sure.
research,
Yeah.
and the different levels. So, can you just tell us briefly about the levels, and then we'll talk about like why you feature Colby and kind of his weaknesses?
Yeah, the levels just refer to the level of support that somebody needs in order to be successful. Level three being the most profound amount of support that somebody needs. So this is someone who is likely going to need help with daily living activities, whereas somebody like myself who needs a level one support might need help with, executive functioning tasks, maybe money management, um, social problem solving, conflict resolution, that sort of thing. But they are not likely to need help in areas of daily living, or just basic functioning.
Yeah. So Colby is at level three. And like what kind of for those of you those people out there that haven't seen you on social media yet, we're gonna link your social media um links in the show notes. But like what kind of videos can you describe a video with Colby and like kind of why you're doing it and what's the point that
Yeah,
you're
I've got one that I'm actually going to post later this afternoon. So it's kind of fun that we're talking about this because we had just filmed one. Um, Colby is really interested in animals, and all these videos are edited, which is something that people don't always realize, and sometimes it's easy to forget. But when I edit these videos, a lot of times what you're seeing is not the order of events that took place. Conversation is very difficult for him, but Colby is kind of unique in that he is very socially motivated and he really, really has an internal desire to engage in conversation with people about the subjects that he likes, which is not always the case with folks with level three autism. Oftentimes they prefer to be alone, and Colby is not that way. Colby really does want to have conversations. Unfortunately, that's also something he really, really struggles with. And so I do my best to try and infer the gaps that he sometimes leaves, but it can be challenging because he struggles also with articulation. And so I don't always understand what words he's saying or why he's saying them or what they mean specifically to him. Because a lot of times he'll say something and he doesn't mean what he literally says. So I show these videos to people in an effort to give some visibility to folks with level three support needs, just because it's not very often that you see that on social media. You're more likely to see someone like me who can more or less control how we appear on social media. But people like Colby don't often get the chance to be seen. And it's really important to me that we change that.
yeah. And I do think that even the first 20 pages of your book, and I definitely am going to read it, um, is, you talk about like people like you on social media and how you aren't the average person with autism. Probably more like Colby is. You know what
Right.
I mean? Even though he's level three, like my son is level three. Well, he was diagnosed a long time ago before there were levels, but I mean, he
Right.
definitely needs 24/7 care. And he has language, but not the conversational, even beginning conversational, emerging conversational that Colby has. And so, you know, that is, you do talk about profound autism a bit, and that everything, it seems like everything in the autism world is controversial, but I do in my episode, What is Autism in 2025, I say that a lot of the divide in the autism world and the conflict between you know, uh, people that have autism that are fully conversational and self-advocates, which is wonderful, and the parents of kids with and adult kids with profound needs is that in 2013 when the DSM-5 came out, which you talk about in your book too, like the DSM-5 got rid of Asperger's, collapsed Asperger's and PDD-NOS with autism and autism spectrum disorder. And at the same time, social media was was emerging. And
Right.
so, I do think that this is why I was excited, really excited to have you on the show. And I've been wanting to have this conversation for a long time. But like, I do think that you do an excellent job of saying, like, this isn't the only kind of autism, This is, here's Colby. He has level 3 autism and he struggles with X, Y, and Z. And let's not get into this, um, why does it have to be so controversial? And now you're speaking at ABA events. You've spoken at a few in the past year or so. So how do you address people? We've done shows on this, whole shows on this. Like, how do you address people that think that ABA is bad or even abusive?
It's tough. Online, kind of my go-to response when people just ask a question or make a blanket statement, I generally say the internet is where nuance goes to die, and it is alive in my book or it is alive at these conferences. You have to kind of look outside of social media to get the answers you're looking for if you're looking for answers. And then the flip side of that is ABA does have a bad reputation. And when I talk to groups of ABA therapists, I don't mean it in an accusatory way, but they kind of earned it. If you look up videos, of ABA being implemented, you're not likely going to enjoy what you see. It's some old school methods that maybe had some clinical value back in the day, but we've learned better ways to operate. You learn better, you do better. And so another way that I'm working on combating that directly is that I'm also the social media manager of the Project Hope Foundation Instagram. And through I don't know what you would call it aside from just like permission slips. We've got written consent from several families to highlight the aspects of treatment, obviously with the proper permissions in place that show ABA in what it really can be. And so instead of telling people, oh, we don't hit kids anymore, we're not abusive anymore, let's just show them because they don't get to see it. No, and also no one believes us. So that's my other big motivation in filming different pieces of ABA sessions taking place in real time is that it doesn't really matter what you say, it matters what you do. People want to see it. And at this point, I feel as though to a certain degree, they kind of deserve to see it because what they've seen so far has really not been fantastic.
Right, right. I love that response. I did do a podcast on the 4 myths and truths from my perspective on ABA. And I use, as a registered nurse, behavior analyst, mom, advocate, I use positive procedures. And I do have written permission from many families that I've worked with, and even some online families who have given permission to share their videos that we can see pre and post gains. I did a white paper we can link in the show notes to show pre and post gains with positive, proven child-friendly procedures. And I think, yeah, I've never heard of Project Hope, but I'm definitely going to look into it. We'll link that in the show notes. We need to get organizations that do quote unquote good ABA and very using positive procedures only and don't use escape extinction and don't nag or have if a child's crying, they're not learning. And, we want to spend most of our time preventing problem behaviors. So I think we can really get on board to be like, yes, this is something that we do need to highlight. And families that do are willing to share their videos and share their success. Not all the ABA science is always working, but the different ways people use ABA can sometimes be not so great.
Right.
Yeah. So how can people follow your work? Like, are you interested in more speaking, more, like what are your interests for the future? Because I mean, at only 27, you have a very bright future. I'm excited to keep following you. So how can people follow you and or if they want to get in touch with you for speaking engagements, how does that all work?
The best way to get a hold of me is through email. You can find my email. I mean, all my information is very publicly available. It is a Google search away. I have a link tree, that little link in my bio. If you click on that, it'll show you everything you need to know. Email, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube. I'm everywhere. But if you want to get a hold of me for speaking opportunities or for anything else, email is always the best way to get a hold of me.
Okay, and we'll link that in the show notes as well with your email. So before I let you go, part of my podcast goals is not to just help the kids, but to help the parents and professionals lead less stressful lives, be happier, are there any stress reduction tools you use or self-care tips that you use that you would recommend?
Personally, I have a gym membership and I am trying to build a little bit more self-discipline and getting better at going to the gym. I've had a gym membership for a long time, but I'm trying to actually use it. And when I do, I certainly find that it is very helpful. It's just a matter of doing it and not waiting until you feel like you're ready to go to the gym, but go to the gym and then you'll feel ready, like that you're ready to go to the gym.
Yeah. Yeah, I think activity and exercise is always a good tip for all of us, and I'm the same way. I have to schedule my exercise, otherwise it won't get done. Well, Kaylin, it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you, and I wish you all the best. I know I'm going to keep following you and wishing you all the best, and hopefully staying in touch and collaborating in the future. So, best of luck.
Yeah, thank you.